أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قال دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت عليك السلام. قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أوئذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به، وسرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألؤ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمة. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حودي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمة. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا لدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه. السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافي أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة فقال: يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن أمي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل العلي نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال له: وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت: السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بدعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيت وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودموهم دمي، يؤلموني ما يؤلموهم ويحزنوني ما يحزنوهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم. فجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا ربي، هم تحت الكساء. فقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدين الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. اللهم صل على محمد. فقال جبرائيل: يا ربي، أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معكم سادسا؟ فقال الله عز وجل: نعم، قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، العلي الأعلى يقرؤك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيء ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فلتأذنوا لي يا رسول الله. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لي أبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. فقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وهفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني برسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيه مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وسئذنا، وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسئيدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد.
صلوات. عاشور کا سورج ہے، قیامت کی گھڑی ہے، بھائی کا گلا کٹتا بہن دیکھ رہی ہے، مقتل میں کسی ماں کی صدا گونج رہی ہے، اے میرے حسین میری گود میں آجا، آجا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آجا، میرے لیے اے لال تو اصغر کی طرح ہے، گودی میری گہوارہ ہے، بستر کی طرح ہے، اس دھوپ میں دامن میرا چادر کی طرح ہے، اے میرے حسین میری گود میں آجا، آجا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آجا، میں ماں ہوں میرا دل نہیں سینے میں سنبھلتا، نازک یہ بدن تیرا یہ جلتا ہوا صحرا، اور اس پہ ستم یہ ہے کہ تو رہ گیا پیاسا، اے میرے حسین میری گود میں آجا، آجا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، میں گود میں لے لوں تجھے، سینے سے لگا لوں، سینے پہ سکینہ کی طرح تجھ کو سلا لوں، سینے کے تیرے تیر میں پلکوں سے نکالوں، اے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، آ کر میرے زانوں پہ جو سو جاتے تھے بیٹا، چکی کی مشقت سے بھی پہلو نہیں بدلا، اب کیسے تجھے چھوڑ دوں مقتل میں اکیلا، اے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، تیری بھی تو اولاد ہے تو بھی تو پدر ہے، اولاد کا غم کیا ہے یہ تجھ کو بھی خبر ہے، غم بچے کا سہ جائے یہ کس ماں کا جگر ہے، اے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، تو لیٹ گیا تھک کے تو اس جلتی زمیں پر، یہ کس کا لہو تو نے ملا روئے حزیں پر، مت خاک پہ سو لال تیری ماں ہے یہیں پر، اے میرے حسین میری گود میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، آ جا میرے بچے میری آغوش میں آ جا، صلوات اللہم صلی علی
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير الأنام أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المظلومين الكرام. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا رسول الله، صلى الله وسلم عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا مصباح الهدى وسفينة النجاة ويا عبرة المؤمنين، غريب مظلوم عطشان شهيد كربلاء، ويا مسلوب العمامة والرداه، ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم، أمن من لجأ إليكم، يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، وخلقه من تراب ثم قال له كن فيكون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Please recite aloud salawat. A louder salawat. My dear loved ones, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we covered last night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this entire universe. Everything within this universe exists through His permission. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not permit for something, it cannot happen. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this universe, He told the angels that I am going to create within it a vicegerent. Inni ja'alun fil ardi khalifa. A vicegerent. So the angels, they look to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's as if they're saying, oh Allah, after this hard work, this beautiful earth that you have created, this pure earth that you have created, you're going to pollute it with someone by installing a human within that earth for them to shed blood, for them to wreak havoc, spread mischief, all while we obey you constantly and we engage in tasbih to you, O Allah. So Allah tells them, I know that which you do not. And that is when He creates Adam alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He takes dust, He takes soil, and He creates from that soil Nabiullah Adam alayhi salam. And this is what is mentioned in Surah Al-Imran, verse 59. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Jesus is like Adam. Some people get stuck on the concept of Jesus. Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam. How is it that he was born without a mother? Well, Adam was born without a mother and a father. Without a father and a mother. How was Jesus born without a father? I'm sorry. Adam was born without any parents. And Allah says, Jesus is just like Adam. I took soil and I told it to become, and it became. Through its permission, through Allah's permission, it became that substance that carried Adam. And after this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to examine the angels. He wanted to test them. So after the creation of Adam, He tells the angels to bow to him. Bow to Adam. Perform sujood to Adam. Because they had doubts. Why is it that you're creating a Khalifa? And he wants to examine them and see who would not pass that test. And they all bow except whom? Iblis. Ahsantum. فأبى واستكبر. In Surah Sad. Thank you. صلى على محمد وآل محمد. In Surah Sad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala paints for us the picture of why Iblis went from being one of the jinn that was close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, spent his life in the obedience of Allah, seeking the pleasure of Allah, his entire existence, and eradicating that all in 1 minute, and becoming one of the evil, most evil creations of Allah. Why? For two things. In Surah Sad, it becomes very clear, ayah 75. Iblis says, you created me from fire, and you created him from soil. خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. And how is it that you expect me, your creation that you created from fire, to bow to a creation that you made from dust, from soil? Because he, in his mind, he's thinking that fire is superior to soil, which is what is known as analogical reasoning, my dear loved ones, qiyas. And this is something that we have to avoid engaging in, analogical reasoning. You see, even from a scientific perspective, let's look at the argument that Iblis had. He says that fire is better than soil. And when we look to this argument, it does not hold. Why? Because fire, what produces fire is only a byproduct of soil, of wood, for example. Wood is found after it's planted in soil. Even those fossil fuels, they're deep within the earth, contained by soil. And you may say, well, Sayyid, you know, this earth, at one point it was a giant ball of fire. And then after a cooling period, it became a giant ball of lava. And then it became this earth with soil. And let me ask you, when it was a giant ball of fire, did it contain life? Yes or no? Answer me. Did it contain life when it was a giant ball of lava? No, only when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He prepared it for life after it cooled, that it carried life. When you ask anyone, ask any scientist, does the sun have any proof of existent life? They'll tell you no. So even by that means, my dear loved ones, his argument did not hold. And sometimes, this is something that we have to also understand, that sometimes we engage maybe in analogical reasoning. This part of faith does not make sense to me, and I compare it to my logic and my intellect. But that's not how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to understand His faith, through analogical reasoning. Now, my dear loved ones, after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, He also created Hawa, Eve, to be his partner, to be his spouse. And he told them, live in heaven, in paradise, as long as you want. And do whatever it is that you wish. And you can enjoy forever, as long as you don't do one thing. Don't go near this tree, this specific tree. That's the golden rule. How last night we talked about cause and effect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, there's a cause and an effect. Don't go towards this tree. But Shaitan, because of his anguish and his jealousy and his bitterness, he felt the need to go and trick Adam and Hawa to go and approach that tree. And they did. And they made a mistake. They made a mistake. Yeah, we believe they made a mistake. They did not sin. Adam did not sin. And this is something that makes following the path of the Ahlul Bayt particular, because we believe that prophets are ma'soomeen. They don't sin. We don't believe in the idea of the original sin. that humans are punished until today because of the sins of Adam. No. We are all born pure, Muslimin. That's our fitrah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said there was a cause and an effect, and He sent them to earth. When He sent them to earth, He created for them children, sons. Their sons, the sons of Adam, Habil and Qabil. And their story is very important for us to understand because it carries concepts that are heavy and that are very important on our lives. And we'll go towards that story after a loud salawat. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Adam his sons, Habil and Qabil, one of them was good and one of them was not so good. Habil, he was a mu'min. He was a good son. And he followed the rules and the regulations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was obedient to his family. He was obedient to his parents. Qabil, not so much. And this naturally created an affinity from Adam towards his son, his better son, Habil. This was not due to favoritism. But naturally, if you have someone who's good and someone who's not so good, you'll have a better interaction with he who is better. And this created a rift, a jealousy between the brothers, specifically Qabil towards Habil. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one day He wants to examine them and test them, which is why we're created, for Allah to examine and test us. So He asks them to provide a sacrifice. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Holy Quran. He asks them to provide a sacrifice. And the method of sacrifice at that time was that individuals would be instructed to take a sacrifice to a specific destination, place it there, Allah would send a fire, and that is how that fire would consume that sacrifice. That is how the sacrifice would be accepted. Habil, he was a shepherd, so he goes to his livestock and he looks at the livestock and he tries to find the most expensive and the best quality and the one that is more dear to his heart, that which he loves, and he goes and he takes that as the sacrifice and he places it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts that sacrifice. Whereas Qabil, he was a farmer and he goes to his crop and he says, you know what, this fire is going to consume my crop anyways, so let me take the worst of my crop, that which I don't need, that which I may not be able to sell or consume, and I'll put that towards the fire and let the fire consume that. And Allah does not accept his sacrifice, my dear loved ones. And this, again, creates a jealousy between Qabil towards Habil. That he feels this need, this anger, this drive to punish his brother. Why? Because Shaitan came and began to whisper in his ear. Why is it that your brother's sacrifice was accepted? Why is it that yours was not? And this jealousy, my dear loved ones, leads the brother to kill his own brother, his own kin, his own beloved. And this carries implications on our own life, on our own existence, my dear loved ones. You see, their story is important because, first of all, Allah is telling us, when you sacrifice that which you love. If you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your sacrifice, come from a place of taqwa, from piety, from a place of wanting to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not a place of riya, not a place of asking others to come and see, hey, you know, this is how much I donate, this is how much I give, this is what I do for others. No, do it to establish a relationship and bond with Allah based on piety and based on seeking the pleasure of Allah alone, not the pleasure of others. Secondly, it establishes an important concept in our life that jealousy, if unchecked and uncontrolled, can lead to damnation, can lead to destruction, my dear loved ones, truly. And this is not an exaggeration. Now, how is it that we can treat jealousy? You see, with every problem, you have to identify the problem to identify what? The solution. So we have to identify where our jealousy is rooted. When you look to research that is done on jealousy, specifically, in scientific peer-reviewed articles from scientific journals, psychologists, sociologists, they have a high emphasis on one form of jealousy. And most of the work on jealousy done is on one form of jealousy, and that is romantic jealousy. But this is not the most important jealousy that applies to us, especially within our communities, because we are insulated from that kind of jealousy. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, my dear loved ones, after a loud salawat. We are protected from this through the institution of marriage. In the religion of Islam, romance, intimacy is governed by a godly domain. It is blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the institution of marriage. The institution which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly loves. This is what the Prophet says. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He says, "Ma buniya bina'un fil Islam ahabbu ila Allah min at-tazwij." There is no institution developed in the religion of Islam more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than marriage. He says, "An-nikahu sunnati, faman raghiba an sunnati, fahuwa laysa minni." So many traditions indicate that he stresses we should get married. And Allah loves marriage. And in fact, it is through marriage that we safeguard ourselves. Because automatically when you get married, Allah places between you mawadda and rahmah. This is mentioned in Surah Ar-Rum. Allah places between the spouses love, affection, and mercy. Now it's our responsibility to continue strengthening those attributes in the marriage. The foundation is there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides it for us. But it's our essential responsibility to strengthen that mawadda and that rahmah. When I see that my spouse is tired, and I see that my spouse is struggling, when I see that my wife, for example, has had a very long night and a longer day, and I look at her and I have some limited expectations from her. I don't see my wife as a supernatural being, as a superhero that has unlimited capabilities of doing what I expect from her. In the same way, I look to my husband with rahmah, with mercy, with altruism, with ithar. If my husband is down, I lift him up. I take care of some things. The relationship of a marriage is not based on an exact divide of your responsibilities and an exact divide of your emotions and an exact divide of the entire marriage. It's based on ithar and altruism. I put you before myself and you put me before yourself, and that golden formula is what allows us to succeed. Rahmah means that I understand my spouse's limitations. I understand that they have limited energy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us these two attributes in the Holy Quran for us to strengthen them, continuously strengthen them. In the West, there may be something that is very prevalent, that is, related to romantic jealousy, because there are many relations that are not blessed by the domain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are not enjoying the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has provided to us. Some find that one day this person is their co-worker, the next day they're living with them, and the third day they're sworn mortal enemies. When there are no boundaries in the relationship, no understanding in the relationship, they don't understand their relationship status, of course they're going to have some form of jealousy and anger and feelings of, why is this person even dedicated to me? What's to say they won't up and leave? What's to say that they are not going to betray me? Because this relationship is not blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not in the realms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has dictated for us. And some may accuse and say, well, you Shia, you also have that in your communities, the romantic jealousy, because you guys engage in halal dating. What is halal dating? Oh, you Shia, you believe in temporary marriage. First of all, this is not a Shia belief. This is in the Holy Quran, my dear loved ones. It's in Surah An-Nisa. And it was a practice that was very prevalent in the time of the Prophet. If the Prophet wanted, why did he not banish this? And lastly, you have to understand this was outlawed and banished in the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab. So this is not a Shia belief that we created out of thin air. And in fact, even within that marriage, there are boundaries, there are strict guidelines, there are strict rules and regulations that you must follow. And there are two individuals that come to terms, that understand what kind of relationship they're in. There's no confusion. There's no confusion there. So we don't accept that accusation either, my dear loved ones. Now, alhamdulillah, Allah has insulated us from that jealousy. What is the jealousy that we have to eradicate from our hearts? What is the jealousy that exists within our hearts that we need to focus on and we need to purify our hearts from? We'll look at that after a loud salawat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His mercy, out of His kindness towards us, He has given us guides. He has given us those that we follow, those that teach us the right way, those who are Muhammad and Al Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And they have indicated we must eradicate our souls from arrogant jealousy. Jealousy that is placed and rooted in arrogance, my dear loved ones. And this is also a Quranic concept. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 33, He says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed the angels to bow before Adam, all of the angels bowed except Iblis. Aba was istakbar. Istikbar is arrogance. Istikbar is the feeling that I am superior to others and everyone needs to be below me. Istikbar is the feeling that I'm better than everyone else. And this feeling is what causes us to be extremely jealous of others. This istikbar, this jealousy. Iblis, when he felt better than Adam, because of his substance and Adam's substance, that is what led for him to defy Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the same method, jealousy, our jealousy is rooted in arrogance, in the fact that we feel better than others. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he says in Nahj al-Balagha the following: Amir al-Mu'mineen, which we must follow. When he speaks, you listen. Why? Because he is who says, علمني رسول الله ألف باب من العلم من كل باب تنفتح لي ألفي باب من العلم. My beloved Rasulullah is the one who taught me 1,000 doors of ilm. And from each of those 1,000 doors, 1,000 doors of ilm open to me. That is Amir al-Mu'mineen. That is who When he speaks, you must listen. And Nahj al-Balagha, truly, my dear loved ones, is a comprehensive guide for a successful living, successful life, because Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, he was al-Quran al-Natiq, the speaking Quran, the Quran that could communicate with you. That is why Nahj al-Balagha is a text that every time you read it, you find something new within it. He says within Nahj al-Balagha, he says that I am puzzled and I am bewildered by what? By the heedlessness of the jealous concerning the health and the safety of their bodies. What does this mean? He continues, and he says that jealousy, within it, Allah placed justice. The way Allah created this is that within it has justice. How? Because it kills he who possesses it. What does this mean, Amir al-Mu'mineen? Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying that he who possesses jealousy is stricken. His body has ailments. He becomes ill. He becomes sick. The anguish, the anger that you're inflamed with to your core, it causes you to drain yourself. It causes you to drain yourself from the positive energy that you have in your body. This allows you to have physical damage on your life and physical ailments and illnesses, my dear loved ones. And in fact, he who possesses jealousy is someone that would be killed by it himself. That jealousy would drive you to madness to the point that you destroy your own life. You cannot focus on your own success. You cannot focus on being a productive part of society and community. You only focus on others and what they're doing and how you can be involved in dictating their life and looking at their flaws, my dear loved ones. This is what happens when you possess jealousy. And there are scientific articles that were published about this, specifically in a phenomenon that has opened a new avenue to jealousy, my dear loved ones, within our community, within this, past few years. And that is our addiction and our dependence on social media. That it's a part of our lifestyle. Now, social media has created a disease within our communities that is spreading like wildfire. And some of you are looking at me now and you're saying, Sayyid, come on. You sound like a boomer. You sound like someone who doesn't want to have fun and enjoy life. What's the big deal with social media? To have TikTok, to have Snapchat, whatever it is. Give me a break. But the fact is, when you want to look at it from a large perspective, the least it does is it damages your productivity. When you sit every day and you spend hours on social media, this is not only directed at the youth, because 253 million Americans, they have social media. That's more than 2/3 of the American population. That means young and old, they have social media. But it kills your productivity when you sit on social media. Yeah, if you use it in the right methods and in the right means to research, to learn, to keep up with current events maybe, to connect with others professionally, which is inshallah how we all use it, it's okay. But if it opens an avenue for it to feed our jealousy, my dear loved ones, this is what scientists have found. In the Journal of Cyber Psychology, Behavior and Social Networking, my dear loved ones, scientists found that there was a phenomenon known as Facebook envy. What was this Facebook envy? Users, when they scroll on their feed and they look at the life of others, they had heightened levels of jealousy. They have heightened levels of envy. And this in turn created declined levels of satisfaction on their own lives. Declined levels of happiness in their own lives. Why? Because these scientists, they said that social media is a realm that does not reflect reality. People on social media, they portray a life that truly does not exist. You see a photo of your friend at a resort in the Maldives, wow, this is amazing. I wish that was my life. But you don't know that the fact may be that this trip was a terrible trip. That this person had toxic company on this trip. This trip was fueled with anger, with problems. Maybe this person lost their belongings on this trip. You only see that one small snapshot of the happiness, those few seconds, but you don't know the reality behind that. And who's to say that trip even brought that person happiness from within? When you look at your friend's feed and you see, wow, my friend just bought a new car, and I wish that was me. Let's think to ourselves, my dear loved ones. It's possible this does not feed that person's happiness. Other things feed their happiness. And look to what you have in your life that has blessed you. As parents, we look at the social media of other parents. This person's son went to Harvard. This person's son went to Yale. Why can't my children be that way? And we begin to try to reflect and think and compare our children to others. And this allows us to miss that children are a blessing, are a ni'mah, regardless. Your goal in life should not be that your child has 5 PhDs and 6 masters and goes, yes, we want them to succeed and be heroes within the community. Please listen. We want them to be productive parts of the community, inventors, successful, but not at the expense of their faith, not at the expense of their wilayah, not at the expense of their iman. They go hand in hand. So if you have children that are mu'mineen, mu'minat, inshallah the gap will close. If they are not professionally there, in the education sense, they may not be completely successful, but count your blessings, my dear loved ones. Look to what you do have. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, sallu ala Muhammad. He says that the ailment of your souls is that you look towards others. And he says in Nahj al-Balagha, Tuba liman, glad tidings, happiness, congratulations to he who looks to his own flaws before the flaws of others. We said that our arrogance allows us to be consumed by jealousy. And our arrogance also allows us to look at others in an inferior way. Look at this person not performing his prayers on time. I perform all my prayers on time. This young woman's hijab is not perfect. Mine is perfect. This is a place of arrogance. But Amir al-Mu'mineen says those, Tuba liman, happiness, glad tidings, a happy life to those who are busy looking at their own flaws before the flaws of others. How can I improve myself? How can I look to myself and see where it is that I can be a more successful individual in my society and in my community, my dear loved ones? Let's think. When was the last time I did something kind for someone? Just an act of kindness. I'm not asking about the last time you fasted for 40 days and prayed for 40 nights and something like that. No, an act of kindness that anyone of us can commit to. Something beautiful that I see every night after I leave the Majlis, I see there's someone standing, handing food to others. This barakah, this tabarruk, this niyaz that we hand out. This is a beautiful tradition, my dear loved ones. This is a tradition that we should always hold strong in our communities. And it should not be a tradition that's only exclusive to these nights, Muharram, Safar, until after Rabi'. No. As a community, we can band together and say, once a month, let's organize, let's come together, let's put together some food for the less fortunate. Within this community, so many people sleep without an empty stomach. This is a reality. Within this area, there are many hungry people. We can help them. The people of Medina, during the life of Al-Imam As-Sajjad alayhi salam, the less fortunate, they would open their doors and they would find food at their doorsteps. A package of food delivered every day on their doorsteps. And they would take it and they would eat it and they would be nourished by it. And they didn't know who was providing that to them. Because the Imam, he would leave in the dark of night. And he would conceal his identity. And he would carry that heavy, heavy bag over his back, over his shoulder, full of the best meats, the best food, the best fruits and vegetables. Highest quality of food, that which he loved. And he would place it on their doorsteps with no compensation asked. And one night, they go hungry. They become hungry. And it's that night they realize who was bringing that food to their doorsteps. Al-Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. They say traditions indicate, and Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, he also, traditions attributed to him, indicate that during the time of the ghusl al-mayyit of our Imam, our beloved Imam, they look to his body and they see on his back the injuries and the scars and the calluses of carrying that heavy bag of food. These are our role models, my dear loved ones. These are those who we are attached to. An act of kindness. Instead of feeding our jealousy, let's feed others. This can be a productive, a positive way for us to come together as a community. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. You want to create a community that is united, that is undivided, eradicate jealousy. Come together upon birr, upon taqwa. Do acts of kindness. You want to create a society that becomes a civilization, there's a difference. You have to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed. Those golden rules, those formulas, the cause and effect. Allah says if you come together on birr and taqwa, you become a civilization. Otherwise you don't. Allah. If we come together on udwan, we don't become a civilization. A civilization is created through birr and taqwa, an alliance of doing good, serving others. You may create an empire through udwan, but empires do not stand the test of time. This is on a personal level, on a societal level, and even on the level of nations, my dear loved ones, this advice from Allah. Ta'awanu ala al-birri wa taqwa. Udwan can give you an empire. Empires do not stand the test of time. Udwan is that which you come to oppression, to destruction, genocide. That does not create a civilization that stands the test of time, my dear loved ones. So we must learn, come together in piety, in good action, in doing good, ally with that which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And finally, my dear loved ones, do not allow jealousy to drive you to treat others the same way. What does that mean? When others sever ties with you because they are jealous, because they have arrogance towards you, don't repay that action with the same. You have to treat that with what is better, my dear loved ones. Amir al-Mu'mineen in his wasiyah to Al-Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam after the battle of Siffin, he tells him, my beloved son, if your brother in Islam severs his ties with you, you proactively seek to mend that relationship. Proactively go to have a solid relationship with your brother in Islam. If one of our brothers, one of our sisters wants to cut ties with us because of their jealousy towards us, repay that with affection, with love, with kindness, that coldness with tenderness. Why? Because those who are jealous, my dear loved ones, they live in places of darkness, in places of loneliness, in places of anguish. And when they feel that someone still cares about me, regardless of my jealousy and my actions towards them, and you close that gap with tenderness and kindness and love and respect, this formula allows them to come back to the community, to come back to being a loving person. This is how we repay that jealousy. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was a person that others were jealous of. His entire life, those who were close companions to the Prophet were jealous of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Did he stop his mission? Did he stop in his path? No. He continued. He continued in the path of haqq, my dear loved ones. And until today, there are those who are jealous about the message that is carried by Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam and his followers. And that message that we subscribe to, we hold close to us. Why? Because it unifies us. This minority, this small minority of Shia is strong because of the message of Hussein, because they subscribe to that path and that message. This small minority cannot be divided, regardless of their background, regardless of their age, regardless of their ethnicity. They're united under the love and the banner of Sayyid al-Shuhada. This is what unites us. And others become jealous of this. Sayyid al-Shuhada that brought together people in his camp that were from different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different faiths. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, when he's in his path towards Karbala, he's in the desert and he sees a tent. And he asks, who does this tent belong to? His companions go and come back and they tell him, this tent belongs to a Christian family. And he says, can you go and call the man of that household, please? I want to ask him to support us, to stand with us, to come to our aid, to stand with justice. And his mother is there, the mother of Wahab. And she says, my son is out right now. He's fetching water for us. They tell him, tell your son that Hussein ibn Ali is calling him. He has to have a word with him. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, when he meets this young man Wahab, he does not judge him. He does not come from a place of looking towards him that you are of a different faith. No. And in fact, Wahab, he recognizes that Hussein stands for justice. Regardless of my background, I am Christian, but I stand with Hussein. I come to his aid. I come to his calling. The message of Sayyid al-Shuhada transcends those boundaries, my dear loved ones. This is what we have to identify with our colleagues. We tell them, did you know that our Imam, he had a companion that was Christian? And you tell them. And you inform them. And they identify with that. Because Hussein is the universal call of justice, my dear loved ones. And Wahab, my dear loved ones, he joins the camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada. But he was just married. He was just married, and it was not even a month before the completion of his marriage. So his wife, she tells him, Wahab, you're going to leave me? If you go and fight with Hussein, there's no coming back. You see all of his companions that are going. They are meeting their fate. They are being granted of shahada. Don't leave me. We just got married. We have our whole life ahead of us. And his mother tells him, no, you must go. And there's a division. And his wife, she goes back into the tent and the camp of the women of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Please dim the lights so that we can lament a bit. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And his wife, suddenly, she has a change of heart. And she comes to him and she tells him, Wahab, qatil dun al-tayyibin, go and sacrifice your life and fight on behalf of these purified individuals. What happened? Where's the change? Why is it that you have decided for me to go and fight? His wife tells him, when I sit in this camp and I see the daughters of Hussein and I see a Sayyida Zainab and I hear the voice of Hussein when he stands on that plain of Karbala and says, هل من ناصر ينصرنا هل من ذاب يذب عن حرم رسول الله? Is there someone who will come to our aid, to our assistance? I cannot help but feel my heart is broken for Hussein. قاتل دون الطيبين. Go, Wahab. But she tells him, before you go, I want to ask you something. And not just you, I want us to both go to Sayyid al-Shuhada. I want us to have a conversation with him. And she goes with Wahab and they sit with Sayyid al-Shuhada. She says, Wahab, I want you to promise me, when you reach the level of Shahada and when you are able to reach that rank in paradise that none of us will reach, first and foremost, no one is going to come to my aid. I just married you. And now I'm with the camp of Hussein. I'm not going back to my family. Oh, Aba Abdullah, I want you to promise me that when Wahab meets his fate, you will put me in the camp with Zainab. Just as Zainab has a place in this camp, and those orphans have a place in this camp, find me a place in this camp, Sayyid al-Shuhada. Make sure I'm taken care of after Wahab. And secondly, she looks towards Wahab, and she tells him, Wahab, when you are in Jannah, do not forget me. We ask Sayyid al-Shuhada in this night, O Sayyid al-Shuhada, we spend our entire lives lamenting you, crying for you. We ask you to take care of us on the day of judgment. Intercede for us on the day of judgment. We want your shafa'ah. The wife of Wahab who asked Wahab, we ask the master of Wahab, Ya Aba Abdullah, in these nights, we ask you for your shafa'ah. Intercede for us before Allah, for Allah to grant us our hajat. And Wahab, he goes and he engages valiantly in battle. And his wife, she begins to feel the sorrow and the pain and the agony and the suffering. And she hears him begin to take his final breaths, and she continues to say, قاتل دون الطيبين. Wahab, give your last final breaths for these honorable individuals, for Hussein. But I want you to remember, my dear loved ones, your Mawla Hussein, when he was left without his companions on that plain of Karbala, when he would call out, هل من ناصر ينصرنا. And as Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam, she would go out and she would look at her brother lonely, fighting alongside no one, until he was slaughtered. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un wa saya'lamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalabin yanqalibun wal 'aqibatu lil muttaqin. My dear loved ones, raise your hands in dua. Oh Allah, we ask you in the names of those that you love, Fatima and her father and her husband and her two sons, we ask you, all those who are ill and sick, all those who are fighting cancer, diabetes, mental illnesses, illnesses with no cure, oh Allah, we ask you to provide them complete cure and shifa. Oh Allah, we ask you in the name of Sayyid al-Shuhada to protect our youth. Oh Allah, we ask you in the name of Sayyid al-Shuhada to prolong our lives in your obedience and to allow us until our final breaths to serve the cause of Sayyid al-Shuhada. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات نهدي ثواب سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على بسم الله.
سقائے سکینہ عباس عباس سقائے سکینہ عباس عباس زینب کا سہارا عباس عباس سقائے سکینہ عباس گالوں پہ تماچے یوں ہی کھاتی تھی سکینہ رو رو کے فقط تم کو بلاتی تھی سکینہ آ جاؤ خدا را عباس سقائے سکینہ عباس تم تھے میری چادر کے محافظ میرے بھیا تم سو گئے میدان میں میرا چھن گیا پردہ سر کھل گیا میرا عباس سقائے سکینہ عباس سنتی ہوں کہ دریا پہ ہوا قبضہ تمہارا عباس سقائے سکینہ عباس شبیر کا سر پشت سے جب کاٹا گیا تھا خنجر کے تلے بھائی نے دو بار کہا تھا آؤ میرے بھیا عباس یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین
یا عباس یا عباس یا عباس یا عباس جہاں بھی پانی و مشک و علم کی بات چلی علی کے لال کے قدموں تلے فرات چلی وفا عشق و محبت کی کائنات چلی دعائے فاطمہ زہرا بھی ساتھ ساتھ چلی
دعائے فاطمہ زہرا بھی ساتھ ساتھ چلی
علم کے دم سے ہے اب تک حیات پانی کی زری کی جیت ہوئی اور مات پانی کی زری کی جیت ہوئی اور مات پانی کی یا عباس
یا
وہ ایک مشق چکا سر سمیٹ کر نکلی لبوں پہ اپنے سمندر سمیٹ کر نکلی تبسم علی اصغر سمیٹ کر نکلی وہ ایک ضرب سے لشکر سمیٹ کر نکلی وہ ایک ضرب سے لشکر سمیٹ کر نکلی اگر نہ کہتی آب حیات پانی کی ہر ایک نگاہ سے گر جاتی ذات پانی کی ہر ایک نگاہ سے گر جاتی ذات پانی کی یا عباس یا عباس یا عباس یا حبیبی کے صدقے علی کے لال سلام جری شکی اسد شیر ذوالجلال سلام وفا کی آخری حد کے مہ کمال سلام نہیں ہے دونوں جہاں میں تیری مثال سلام نہیں ہے دونوں جہاں میں تیری مثال سلام تیرے کتے ہوئے بازو نجات پانی کی تیرے بدن کا پسینہ زکوٰۃ پانی کی تیرے بدن کا پسینہ زکوٰۃ پانی کی میری حیات کا سامان ناصر شبیر بدلتا رہتا ہے جو کائنات کی تقدیر فرات و مشق و علم جس کی حشر تک جاگیر میں اور یہ میری تنظیم اس کے در کے فقیر میں اور یہ میری تنظیم اس کے در کے فقیر بہے گی چشم ازا سے فرات پانی کی چلے گی مجلس و ماتم میں بات پانی کی چلے گی مجلس و ماتم میں بات پانی کی عباس
عبد الله يا حسين بن علي الشهيد بكربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم يا أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين زين العابدين ومحمد بن علي الباقر وجعفر بن محمد الصادق وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم وعلي بن موسى الرضا ومحمد بن علي الجواد وعلي بن محمد الهادي وحسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا حجة ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم